You have all been a victim of propaganda. Whether you believe so or not, you've been preaching propaganda since you were in elementary school, maybe even earlier. Want to know how or why? Simple. Music. Music like, "This land is your land, this land is my land," or "God bless America, land that I love." You get my point. Everyone knows those songs. They're symbols of patriotism and acceptance, secondary national anthems, if you will. You know those songs, I know those songs, my 7-year-old cousin knows those songs. But I don't think you or my 7-year-old cousin know that Woody Guthrie wrote "This Land Is Your Land" because he was literally just sick of hearing "God Bless America" on the radio. "God Bless America" has its own interesting story. In 1918, Sergeant Irving Berlin was stationed at Camp Upton in Yaphank, right here on Long Island. He had already been a successful songwriter, now a draftee of World War I, when his commanding officer asked him to write a sort of musical revue to help with fundraising. This resulted in Yip Yip Yaphank, a lighthearted musical revue about Army life at the time. Now, Berlin had written a song that he ended up scrapping from the whole review, because he believed the lyrics were too sappy. This sappy song, entitled "God Bless America," was then stored in a trunk for around 20 years, until the year 1938, when hit singer Kate Smith asked Berlin to write her a number for her weekly radio show. She wanted something fresh for the 20th anniversary of the end of the Great War. Then Berlin had serious composer's block. He had no clue what to write, but he seriously felt the pressure to deliver. Just then, he remembered a manuscript he drafted years earlier. He dusted off an old trunk, pulled out said manuscript, and read the title, "God Bless America." Kate Smith then performed this on her weekly radio show, and the song immediately caught on. The American public resonated with the lyrics and the patriotic nature of the tune. In 1939, 500,000 copies of the sheet music were sold in that year alone. Enter Woody Guthrie, a cowboy's son with a uniquely dry outlook on life. Guthrie was born in Oklahoma in 1912. During his early years, he experienced a series of incredibly tragic personal losses. These included the accidental loss of his older sister, his town's financial ruin, and the eventual loss of his mother. Based on these circumstances, you can tell why Guthrie would have the outlook that he did on life. So by 1931, he had hit the open road looking for any way to support his family. So he headed for Texas, where he then fell in love and started a family of his own. If the Great Depression made it hard for Guthrie to support his family, the Great Dust Storm period made it impossible. So he hit the open road once again, headed for California. He picked up any small jobs or radio gigs he could get on the way. After being in California a while, Guthrie realized that he was not comfortable with success or staying in one place for too long, so he ended up heading all the way east to New York City, arriving in 1940, where he was quickly embraced for his homespun wisdom and musical authenticity by writers, artists, and musicians. During all of Guthrie's travels, there was one song that he kept hearing over and over and over again. This song so happens to be "God Bless America" by Irving Berlin. He felt that it completely glossed over the incredibly uneven distribution of land and wealth that he had not only seen, but personally experienced. He thought the lyrics were too blindly patriotic, too sappy, too removed from reality. Guthrie was irritated. So irritated that he wrote a song in response. He first sarcastically titled it "God Blessed America for Me." He wanted it to be insulting to Irving Berlin. By the time Guthrie debuted this song on his weekly radio show in 1944, he had revised the title and some of the lyrics to be less harsh and more appealing to a larger audience. And well, it worked. Nearly 80 years later, we still know every word. Fun fact, this song was performed at former President Obama's inaugural celebration in 2009 by Bruce Springsteen and Guthrie's old friend and folk music legend, Pete Seeger, a performance which was both incredibly powerful and meaningful. So, what's my point? Well, being a musician myself and growing up in these music communities, it's interesting to think about how, but especially why, the music we hear has been written. Everything is a reaction to everything. These aren't just fun little tunes to throw on in the background. People were angry and unfairly treated, and their form of expression was one that has been used to create change since the beginning of time. Here's an interesting timeline. There's a hymn, "Say, Brothers, Will You Meet Us?" This was, in origin, a slave song that provided hope and faith to those in the South. During the Civil War, a regiment in Fort Warren was known to sing to make time pass faster. They sung hymns like this and many others. Through this, the song "John Brown's Body" was born, which spoke of deceased abolitionist John Brown. The song said that even though he had been killed, his story and his soul continued to march on. Soon after, this was adopted into a quite popular Civil War marching song. Then, known suffragist and published poet Julia Ward Howe was traveling in Washington, D.C. when she saw soldiers marching while singing this tune. She was inspired to write new lyrics for it. From this, the Battle Hymn of the Republic was born and sold to a famous newspaper at the time where it quickly caught popularity. Now, the Battle Hymn of the Republic is interesting in its own sense. It was performed at President Trump's inauguration just this past January. Now, why is this interesting? Well, it was a song written by a successful woman who was inspired by a song that was inspired by an abolitionist. I'm just saying, I'm not sure if he would have had the song performed had he known the origins of the music. That's not the end of this tune's story, though. In 1915, Solidarity Forever was written by Ralph Chaplin for the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World. He changed the chorus from "Glory, Glory, Hallelujah" to "Solidarity Forever." In Chaplin's own words, this song was full of revolutionary fervor and defiance in a time where American labor had descended into violent struggle and a fight that seemed, well, hopeless. Revolution through music never went silent, but it started getting sold. Radios were in every home playing the most popular music. People had televisions, which were creating these big movie stars. And live music was taking off as a very popular form of everyday entertainment. Suddenly, the only music getting sold was the kind of stuff that didn't ruffle any feathers. Polished cookie-cutter singers got picked up by labels, and everyone else was left behind in the Dust Bowl. But new voices started to rise in the form of freedom songs. The civil rights movement brought forth artists like Nina Simone, Sam Cooke, Marvin Gaye, Gil Scott-Heron, and so many more. They wrote anthems about race-based violence and silenced protests. All had different voices and styles, but one common goal: call out the system and start a conversation in a way that was palatable by an audience. As societal focus started to shift to different arguments, the music followed. It always does. Soul music shifted to rap and rock, and instead of specifying and calling out certain institutions, artists started making more general social commentary. Groups like Dead Kennedy, NWA, Public Enemy, Rage Against the Machine, and a lot more. In the 90s, we saw the birth of the genre of Riot Girl, the first concentrated feminist rock movement. Going into the 21st century, we saw the development of personal technology and the consumerization of music, which brought forth a lot more mainstream punk as a form of rebellion against institutions. But because of all this personal technology and the consumerization, these songs were no longer anthems of a movement, but standalone bursts of anger and frustration. But here's my point. This music didn't just materialize. These messages didn't appear overnight. This isn't recreational. This is a monument of the human spirit in the face of adversity. To feel, to make, to think is to be human. Art is to give meaning to the chaos. Music, literature, art, that is humanity at its core. All of these external factors, all the discrimination and oppression of the lower classes, the legislature against every American minority, the corruption in our own system, these all bleed into the internal fabric of we, the people, and are reflected through one true form of human expression, creation. So please, turn up your volume, because in the words of Woody Guthrie, music is a tone of voice, the sound life uses to keep living things alive. I'm Mary Elias, and thank you for coming to my TED Talk.